Chapter 27. Arius, having returned to Alexandria with the emperor's consent, and not being received by Athanasius, the partisans of Eusebius bring many charges against Athanasius before the emperor. Arius, having thus satisfied the emperor, returned to Alexandria, but this artifice for suppressing the truth did not succeed, for on his arrival at Alexandria, as Athanasius would not receive him, but turned away from him as a pest, he attempted to excite a fresh commotion in that city by disseminating his heresy. Then, indeed, both Eusebius himself wrote and prevailed on the emperor also to write, in order that Arius and his partisans might be readmitted into the church. Athanasius nevertheless wholly refused to receive them, and wrote to inform the emperor in reply that it was impossible for those who had once rejected the faith and had been anathematized to be again received into communion on their return. But the emperor, provoked at this answer, menaced Athanasius in these terms: Since you have been apprised of my will, afford unhindered access into the church to all those who were desirous of entering it. For if it shall be intimated to me that you have prohibited any of those claiming to be united to the church, or have hindered their admission, I will forthwith send some one who at my command shall dispose you and drive you into exile. The emperor wrote thus from a desire of promoting the public good, and because he did not wish to see the church ruptured, for he labored earnestly to bring them all into harmony. Then indeed the partisans of Eusebius, ill-disposed towards Athanasius, imagining they had found a seasonable opportunity, welcomed the emperor's displeasure as an auxiliary to their own purpose, and on this account they raised a great disturbance, endeavoring to reject him from his bishopric, for they entertained the hope that the Arian doctrine would prevail only upon the removal of Athanasius. The chief conspirators against him were Eusebius, bishop of Nicomedia, Theogius of Nicaea, Marius of Chalcedon, Euarchus of Singdium in Upper Moesia, and Valens of Mursa in Upper Pannonia. These persons suborned by bribes certain of the Meletian heresy to fabricate various charges against Athanasius, and first they accused him through the Meletians, Ision, Endymion, and Callias, of having ordered the Egyptians to pay a linen garment as tribute to the church at Alexandria. But this calumny was immediately disproved by Alypius and Macarius, presbyters of the Alexandrian church, who then happened to be at Nicomedia. They having convinced the emperor that these statements to the prejudice of Athanasius were false, wherefore the emperor by letter severely censured his accusers, but urged Athanasius to come to him. But before he came, the Eusebian faction, anticipating his arrival, added to their former accusation the charge of another crime of a still more serious nature than the former, charging Athanasius with plotting against his sovereign, and with having sent for treasonable purposes a chest full of gold to one Philomenes. When, however, the emperor had himself investigated the matter at Amartha, which is in the suburbs of Nicomedia, and had found Athanasius innocent, he dismissed him with honor and wrote with his own hand to the church at Alexandria to assure them that their bishop had been falsely accused. It would indeed have been both proper and desirable to have passed over in silence the subsequent attacks which the Eusebians made upon Athanasius, lest from these circumstances the Church of Christ should be judged unfavorably by those who were adverse to its interests. But since having been already committed to writing they have become known to everybody. I have on that account deemed it necessary to make it as cursory allusion to these things as possible, the particulars of which would require a special treatise. Whence the slanderous accusation originated and the character of those who devised it, I shall now therefore state in brief. Maratotes is a district of Alexandria. There are contained in it very many villages and an abundant population, with numerous splendid churches. These churches are all under the jurisdiction of the Bishop of Alexandria, and are subject to his city as parishes. There was in this region a person named Iscarius, who had been guilty of an act deserving of many deaths. For although he had never been admitted to holy orders, he had the audacity to assume the title of presbyter and to exercise sacred functions belonging to the priesthood. But having been detected in his sacrilegious career, he made his escape thence and sought refuge in Nicomedia, where he implored the protection of the party of the Eusebius, who from their hatred to Athanasius not only received him as a presbyter, but even promised to confer upon him the dignity of the episcopacy if he would frame an accusation against Athanasius, listening as a pretext for this to whatever stories Iscarius had invented, for he spread a report that he had suffered dreadfully in consequence of an assault, and that Macarius had rushed furiously toward the altar and overturned the table and broken a mystical cup. He added also that he had burnt the sacred books. As a reward for this accusation, the Eusebian faction, as I have said, promised him a bishopric, foreseeing that the changes against Macarius would involve, along with the accused party, Athanasius, under those whose orders he would seem to have acted. But this charge they formulated later. Before it they devised another full of the bitterest malignity, which I shall now avert. Having by some means, I know not what, obtained a man's hand, whether they themselves had murdered anyone and cut off his hand, or had severed it from some dead body, God knows, and the authors of this deed, but be that as it may, they publicly exposed it as the hand of Irenaeus, a Meletian bishop, while they kept the aligned owner of it concealed. His hand, they asserted, had been made use of by Athanasius in the performance of certain magic arts, and therefore it was made the gravest ground of accusation which these calumniators had consorted against him. But as it generally happens, all those who entertained any pique against Athanasius came forward at the same time with a variety of other charges. When the emperor was informed of these proceedings, he wrote to his nephew Dalmatius, the censor, who then had his residence at Antioch in Syria, directing him to order the accused parties to be brought before him, and after due investigation to inflict punishment on such as might be convicted. He also sent thither Eusebius and Theogonius, that the case might be tried in their presence. Then Athanasius knew that he was to be summoned before the censor. He sent to Egypt to make a strict search after Irenaeus, and he ascertained indeed that he was secreted there, but was unable to apprehend him, because he often changed his place of concealment. Meanwhile, the emperor suppressed the trial, which was to have been held before the censor on the following account.